Alright, so we're going to get straight into it. This is my latest project, and I'm going to turn this big piece of timber into some shelving. Now, it's an Australian hardwood, but due to all the stains all over it at the moment, I can't really tell you what kind of timber it is, what gum. So the first thing is that I wanted to cut straight through the middle here, and what happened is because this is that much bowed, the saw got stuck straight away. So one of the things I got to do is get it off here and put it on the stools that are over there, and then redo that, but then with a hand saw. So back to this, as you can see, one of the things I tried to cover is with the bow that's in there is put some slats on either side, but as I said, that hasn't worked, unfortunately. So now another nice feature of this particular shelving, or what it will be, is the rough edges on the side here. And if you like the panning, we can see that. I'd like to keep that sort of shape, although I will clean it up later, of course. At both ends, it's just going to be cut straight or square, if you want to call it that way. And we got both sides quite rustic. And as I said before, that is what I'd like to keep. We've moved the piece of timber onto the stools there, ready to be cut further. But remember, before we go there, that I've put the safety guard back in place. As you may have noticed before, that wasn't there. And normally I don't take any safety devices off. However, in this case, because there wasn't enough room underneath the saw and the safety guard, it had to go. First thing first is to put the safety guard back on, which is now done and secured. So back to the table. Now we need to ensure that that's going to be safe. I'm going to put my glasses on because not that I can't see the clamps here, but when it comes to measuring, I do definitely need them. So we're going to just very simple, just hang on, do it the other way around, safer that way, because then you don't have that big lump sitting there in the way. And we'll do that to both sides. Rather than the slats, which we had problems with on the other saw, we now do away with that and clamp it down on one side. Because at this point, it's not really important whether this thing is flat on one side and up on the other, because all we're doing is cutting through the middle. Then we have two separate sections, which then can be machined further when we get through the, what do we call that? Planer and thicknesser. This saw is my favorite saw. It's a DeWalt, and I'll use that to cut through this thing. But one of the things I want to do is this is set too deep, obviously, and it'll cut straight to my stool, which I don't want to do. So I'm going to work out exactly. So if I set it to 60 mil, I'll just get through it, and I might get through the pieces of timber that are underneath there, but I won't get through my saw stools. And we'll get back to you once this has been cut in half, because that's a lot of dust and a lot of noise. Okay, so we've cut it into two planks now, and it wasn't too much of a problem with this. But what you may have noticed is I've actually started the cut at the other end of where the original cut was started. The reason for that is I didn't want my saw to get jammed into the original cut, so I wanted to start nice and fresh. And I've now set up my planer thicknesser, which is quite a decent size of a machine, and of course the suction dust collecting system. This one is the piece that we obviously got to do. That's the bottom, and of course here, to give you an idea, I have started, and you can see how uneven that is. So, and with other words, quite a chunk has to be planed off before we can go anywhere. Anyway, you can see we've made a start with getting this dressed. It's just touching over there and just touching up on the top end here. So it's going to take quite a lot of goes before all of this will disappear. And I'm obviously not going to bore you to death with just looking at all of that. So there it is. That's the planer now changed into a thicknesser. So the top blade has been lifted up and you can now put the timber through the bottom end and getting it done. So both sides are machined now and down to 41.5 millimeter. Before I'm gonna do some cutting for the secret shelving bracket. I've put some lines on where I'm going to drill holes because I'm gonna put a dowel through those places. That particular dowel is 16 mil, and I've put some horizontal lines there as well. And here I put a slat, so when you actually drill, you can then line up your drill with that slot, with that slat I should say, so you can stay nice and plumb, because it is very important that the hole that you drill where the dowel is going to go in, which you'll see later in, is going to be absolutely perpendicular, because otherwise, if all four of them are going to be on slightly crooked angles, you'll never get the two pieces back together. Now I've got all the holes into the timber, and I've actually cut a small strip off the back of it as well. And I've clamped them together so that you can actually see that they're lined up as far as the holes is concerned. Of course, I drilled all the way through before I cut with the saw through the middle, because what's going to happen is in that timber there, the smaller one, that's the one that's going to end up against the wall and get drilled into the wall. The wooden pegs will go into those holes, and of course that's how the shelving gets attached to it. That's why it's a 16 mil dowel rather than a 5 or 6 mil dowel. So as you can see, I've got the holes in there. Now I've put a cut through there. I've dressed the two sides so that they can go neatly stick together. I've also made that mark, so when I put this up, at least I know which block belongs to which shelf. I've also got a dowel here now, and that has been sanded down so that the unsanded side will just tightly fit in here, and the sanded part will smoothly fit in here. It needs a little bit more sanding, but you get the picture. So here we can see that I've sanded the first board and not the second board, and you can see the difference in color, and that'll really stand out once the lacquer gets on, of course. And again here the pins are now in, glued, and the one at the back is sanded, the one at the front is not. I've marked them in a way so that I know exactly which block with pins will fit the appropriate board. And the other thing that I've done is, of course, I've cut these now to length, and they're nice and neat, and of course that's been sanded as well, and that one has not, so you can see the saw cuts and part of the grain there. What I'm going to do now is to show you how I'm going to carefully in my workbench clean up this edge. I'm not going to sand it. I want to keep as much of the natural color. Now that looks rather green. So the first thing I'll do is with this brush, I would then go and rub most of that rubbish off
and then with the steel wire brush I'll go over it with a second time, and hopefully we'll get all of that green away. But if not, that's just the way the nature intended for us to have that board.
We're now at the point of getting this ready to be installed on the wall, the way that it's going to be invisible in the future. So what I got here is a stud finder, and of course this timber, and this shelf is going to be roughly about this height. And number 2 is going to be slightly offset, so I'm going to step onto some steps. This is where we're going to drill a hole, and one down there, and of course top and bottom up there. Once this is all painted, or I should say lacquered, install it. Simple. So that's all done, and I'll see you with the next one when we actually have this all finished and lacquered, ready to be installed.
We're now going to go and lacquer the boards. As you can see, I've given the workshop a little bit of a sweep, so to get rid of most of the dust. So this is the lacquer I'm going to use from Cabotain, and it is water-based satin, as you can see. So very simple, just with a 2-inch brush. Okay, so here we are. They're now been lacquered, and what I'm going to do here is show you some of the pattern that's actually in this wood. That's very unusual, because this is actually called spalting.
Alright, so now we're going to get started on actually installing the first piece onto the wall. So I've pre-marked it, but I've still got to drill it. And the screws I'm going to use are 75mm long, otherwise, which is 3 inches, otherwise they won't be long enough to go through 40mm of timber, 10mm of gyprock, and then having enough strength in the into the wall to hold up that plank. So here we go. So the next step is to actually get our board, and fingers crossed it is going to go right. So these are the tests. It's only slightly down. Nothing that I'm going to worry about too much. You know, as I said, it actually looks worse than it is. It's only a couple of mil down because of the weight. Nevertheless, that's happening. Now I've got another tiny little screw. This one, and that's only 1 inch long, because that's all that this needs to do is actually hold this in place, so it's not going to come off. And I've already pre-drilled that and countersunk it, which was obviously what I did to the screws that went into the back block as well. It is countersunk, and so it's not going to affect anything else. So here we go, that's number 1. I'm not going to bore you with number 2. And this is what she will then look like in real life. A floating shelf. See, not that crooked after all. So, until the next project.